The night my mother-in-law told me to pack my things, the furnace I paid to replace back in November was still pushing warm air up through the vents under her slippers. It was -19 outside, the kind of Calgary cold that makes the snow squeak, and she sat at the kitchen table in a cardigan I'd watched her buy at Holt Renfrew on my visa, telling me there wasn't room for me anymore. She didn't even look guilty. That was the part that stayed with me. She folded her hands on the table, the oak table I'd ordered when the old one finally gave out, and she said it the way you'd tell a contractor the job was finished. "We've talked it over, and it makes the most sense for you to find your own place. Your sister-in-law and the baby need to be downstairs near us. You understand. My name is Margot. I'm 31, and I had spent the better part of 3 years quietly keeping that house alive while everyone in it decided I was the one who could be removed." I waited for my husband to say something. He was leaning against the counter with his coffee, the same mug he used every morning, and he looked at the floor. Not at me. At the floor. I gave him a full 10 seconds, which is a long time when you're counting it, and he gave me nothing back. "I understand," I said. And I did. I understood completely. I just understood something different than what she thought I understood. People always picture a scene when they hear a story like this. They picture shouting, a door slamming, somebody crying in a stairwell. There was none of that. I said goodnight. I rinsed my mug and set it on the rack. I went upstairs, brushed my teeth, and lay down beside my husband while he scrolled his phone, and I stared at the ceiling I'd had re-stippled 2 summers ago because she said the old one looked dated. I felt very calm. Calmer than I'd felt in months, honestly. Something in me had been holding a heavy door shut for a long time, and the moment she said those words, I just let go of the handle. The door swung open, and behind it was nothing but quiet. I should explain how I ended up there, because it matters. It's the part nobody believes until they hear it laid out, and even then half of them won't. I met my husband when I was 26. We dated 2 years, got married, the whole thing. A nice wedding at a place out near Bragg Creek, his mother in the front row dabbing her eyes. For the first while, we rented a 1-bedroom in Marteloup, and we were happy in that small, broke, hopeful way you are in your late 20s. He worked in the field for one of the energy services companies. I left my agency job to go out on my own doing communications and grant writing for nonprofits and a couple of health tech startups. Contract work. Steady, if you're good at it. And I was good at it. The money came in lumps, but it came. Then the downturn hit his sector hard. He got his package, then his EI ran out, and the calls stopped coming. He took it personally in a way I didn't fully grasp at the time. A man who'd always paid his half suddenly couldn't, and it did something to him. He got quiet, he got short. He started saying things like, "You don't get it," whenever I tried to talk about budgets. His mother offered the solution that felt generous on the surface. "Come stay with me," she said. "The house is paid down. It's huge. You two save up. You get back on your feet. Family helps family." So we gave up the apartment and moved into the big house in the Southwest, the one his father had left her, and I told myself it was temporary. I told myself a lot of things. What actually happened is that I became the thing holding the whole structure up, and nobody, including me, for too long, wanted to name it out loud. Here is the part the skeptics get stuck on, so let me be plain about it. The house was paid down, not paid off. There was still a mortgage on it, a decent one. Because a few years before we moved in, my mother-in-law had refinanced to do a big renovation, the kitchen, the basement suite, new windows. To qualify for the amount she wanted, the bank needed more income and better credit on the file than her pension gave her. My husband had no job, so they needed me. I co-signed. More than that, to make the bank comfortable, the mortgage specialist suggested adding me to the title as well. My mother-in-law shrugged at the time. "It's just paperwork, dear," she said. "Sign where the sticky tab is." I signed where the sticky tab was. I didn't think about it again for 2 years. Remember that. It comes back. Once we were under her roof, the bills became a slow tide that rose without anyone deciding it should. At first, I just covered the hydro 1 month when money was tight. Then the gas. Then I quietly set up pre-authorized payments out of my own account because chasing everyone for their share was exhausting and humiliating, and because my husband flinched every time money came up. EMAX, the gas, the property taxes, the home insurance, the internet, the alarm monitoring, the lawn company in summer, and the snow removal in winter, the mortgage payment itself. Line by line, it all migrated onto me, automatic, invisible, painless to everyone but the person paying. I added it up exactly once, sitting at that oak table at 2 in the morning, and the number was $4,800 a month. $4,800. Almost $58,000 a year after tax on a household that treated me like a guest who'd overstayed, and nobody knew the size of it. That's the question everyone asks. How could they not know? The answer is so ordinary, it's almost boring. Everything was paperless, set to auto-pay, flowing out of an account only I could see. My mother-in-law had never set up a single online payment in her life. She still mailed checks for things and complained about stamps. My husband had stopped looking at our finances the moment he stopped contributing to them because looking hurt. And I never told anyone the real total, because the one time I'd mentioned my income honestly, early on, I watched my husband's whole face close like a garage door, and I learned to keep it small. Margot does okay with her little contracts, his mother would say to her friends, and I'd smile and refill the coffee. My sister-in-law used to laugh and call me the rich one, the way you'd tease someone about a lottery they hadn't won. I let them all believe it was nothing. It was easier than the truth, which was that I was the foundation, and foundations don't get thanked. They get built on. So, when she told me to leave, what she was really doing, though she had no idea, was telling the foundation to remove itself from under the house. The morning after, I made coffee like always. I kissed my husband on the cheek when he left, which I want to be honest about, because it wasn't tenderness, it was theater. I needed him gone for the day. The second his truck cleared the end of the street, I sat down at the table and made 3 phone calls. The first was to a moving company. Same day was going to cost a premium, but I'd already decided money was no longer something I spent slowly to keep the peace. Full pack, full load, everything that was mine. The woman on the phone asked how big the job was, and I walked through the house with her on speaker, naming the furniture I'd bought, and it turned out to be most of the furniture in the house. The Chesterfield my mother-in-law bragged about to her book club. The dining set. The bed in the spare room. The area rugs. The patio set. The deep freeze in the garage I'd filled more times than I could count. The second call was to my accountant who I'd been quietly meeting with for the better part of a year, because some animal part of me had known this was coming long before my brain admitted it. I asked her to pull together a clean record of everything I'd paid into that household. Dates, amounts, the mortgage contributions, the renovation costs from before. She already had most of it. "It's all here, Margot," she said. "It's been here. I was wondering when you'd want it." The third call was to a family lawyer in Eau Claire whose name a friend had given me at a low point months earlier. I'd kept the card in my wallet like a smoke alarm I hoped I'd never need. She answered her own phone, which I took as a good sign. I told her the short version. There was a pause, and then she asked one question that changed the temperature of the entire day. "Are you on the title?" I said I thought so. I said I'd signed something a couple of years ago for the refinance. "Find out today," she said. "If you're on title, this is a very different conversation than you think it is." I sat with that for a minute after we hung up. Then I went and dug through the accordion file in the closet where my mother-in-law kept her important papers, the ones she'd never once read closely, and I found the land title document, and there I was, both our names, joint owners, tenants in common, my share spelled out in black ink. "Just paperwork, dear." I took a photo of it with my phone, set it down, and made a 4th cup of coffee I didn't need, just to give my hand something to do, because for the first time in 3 years I felt the ground shift in my favor and it was almost too much to hold still. By 11, the movers arrived, 3 of them, polite and fast. The house filled with the sounds of a life being undone. Packing tape screaming off the roll, drawers sliding open, the soft thud of boxes going down, the squeak of dollies on the hardwood Ed had refinished. I made them coffee because I'm Canadian, and apparently I'll offer a stranger coffee in the middle of dismantling my own marriage. They worked through the main floor, then the spare room, then the kitchen. At 11:40, my phone buzzed. My mother-in-law, "We'll sit down tonight and sort out a reasonable timeline. No need to be hasty." I read it twice. She still thought she was holding the calendar. She thought she'd given me a gentle eviction with a soft landing and a few weeks to be grateful in. I typed back one word. Okay. Then I watched 2 men carry her precious Chesterfield out the front door and into the cold, and I felt the okay settle into place like a key in a lock. My husband came home early. I heard his boots on the front step, then the silence when the door opened onto a half-empty living room, the rectangles on the wall where my pictures had been. He came down the hall and stopped in the bedroom doorway while I was taping a box, and his voice came out strange. "Margot, what is this?" I didn't turn around right away. "I'm moving out," I said. "Today." He laughed. That sharp little laugh men do when they're scared and trying to pretend they're annoyed. "You're being dramatic. Mom said you had time." There it was again. Mom said, "You had time." There it was again. Mom said, "Not we should talk." Not, "Are you all right?" Not, "I'm sorry, I stood at the counter and said nothing while my mother put you out in January." Just Mom said, like a forecast he was relaying. I stood up then and looked at him properly. I searched his face for panic, for grief, for some sign that the floor was falling out of his world too. There was nothing like that. Just irritation. The look of a man whose Saturday had been inconvenienced. "You didn't say one word last night," I said. "Not one. Your mother told me to leave my own home, and you looked at the floor." He rubbed his face the way he did. "She just meant the master bedroom for the baby. We were gonna take the basement room. It's not a big deal. The basement room, so that was the offer. Give up the bedroom we shared so his sister and her husband and the baby could have it, and the 2 of us would shuffle down into the windowless room next to the furnace I'd paid for, grateful for the warmth." And he thought that was reasonable. He thought I should have nodded. "So I don't get a home," I said. "I get a corner." That's not what I said, but it was exactly what he meant, and we both knew it. He followed me down the stairs, watching strangers wrap our life in brown paper and blue moving blankets. When they lifted the dining table, his head snapped up. "Whoa, why are they taking that?" I let the first crack of honesty come through. "Because I bought it," I said. "Like nearly everything they're carrying out." He stared at me. "What do you mean, nearly everything?" So I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and held it up between us. I scrolled slow so he could watch it. The mortgage payments, the hydro, the gas, the taxes, the insurance. Month after month after month, all of it pouring out of one account, the account he'd stopped looking at the day he stopped contributing to it. I watched the color leave his face in stages, like a tide going out. "You paid all of it? You never asked," I said. "Not once in 3 years did you ask who was keeping the lights on." Up the street, I heard a car pull into the driveway, the careful crunch of tires on packed snow, and I knew without looking that my mother-in-law was home. And for the first time in 3 years, the sound of her arrival didn't make my stomach tighten. I felt ready. She came through the door mid-sentence, the way she always did, talking before she'd seen the room. Then she saw the room. The bare walls. The echo where the Chesterfield used to absorb every sound. Her face did something complicated. A smile she couldn't fully form. A recalibration happening behind her eyes. What on earth is going on here? My husband opened his mouth and closed it. He looked at me because of course he did, because looking at me to handle things was the family default. "I'm moving out," I said. "Today." Her eyes went hard. "Don't be ridiculous." We said you had time. We agreed. I said softly. I don't remember being part of any we. I remember you telling me, and your son studying the floor tiles. You're being childish. You're hurt and you're lashing out. She waved a hand at the movers, and you can't simply take whatever you like. This is my house. These are my things. That was the moment. I'd been waiting for it without knowing exactly how it would come. I reached into my bag and took out the folder my accountant had couriered over that morning. Tabbed. Dated. Organized. Every payment for 3 years, the renovation costs before that, and clipped to the front, the photo I'd taken of the land title. I held it out, and she took it the way you take something you're sure is going to be nothing, and then she actually read it. These are mine, I said. Legally. And so is part of the house you're standing in. She turned to the title page. I watched her find her own name and then find mine right beside it. Just paperwork, dear. I saw the exact second she remembered saying it. That was for the bank, she said, and her voice had lost something. That doesn't mean anything. My lawyer says it means quite a lot, I told her. My husband still hadn't said a word. My sister-in-law arrived 10 minutes later, pregnant and glowing and ready to admire her new bedroom, and she walked into a living room stripped down to bare floor and laughed nervously. Is this a joke? What happened to all the furniture? I met her eyes. You're getting the house, I said. Mostly. Congratulations. Then why is it empty? And there it was, landing on all 3 of their faces at once. The house wasn't being handed down like a gift. It was being peeled back to what it actually was, and what it actually was had my name woven all the way through it. I checked into a hotel downtown that night, near the river. I ordered room service. I barely touched and lay across the bed with my laptop and my folders spread out like a map. I want to tell you I cried, because that's what people expect, but I didn't. Not that night. I felt clear in a way I hadn't in years. The hurt was still there. It would arrive later in waves, in grocery stores and parking lots, the way grief always ambushes you when you've put your guard down. But that night, it had somewhere to go. It had direction. In the morning, I did the thing I'd never let myself do in 3 years. I stopped paying. Not all at once, dramatically. I simply called the bank and the utility companies and removed my account from the pre-authorized payments. MMAX, the gas, the internet, the alarm monitoring, the snow removal in January, which felt almost poetic. I documented each cancellation, screenshotted each confirmation, and saved them in a folder labeled with the date. Then I sent one short, polite, professional email to my mother-in-law's address, copying my lawyer, stating that effective immediately I would no longer be funding the expenses of a home I'd been asked to vacate, and that all future correspondence regarding my ownership interest should go through counsel. No insults, no exclamation marks, just a closed valve and a cold, even tone. I closed the laptop and breathed out slow. They thought putting me out would create space. They had no idea how expensive that space was about to become. It took about a week for the house to start coming apart, and it came apart in the dull, bureaucratic way real life does, which is so much worse than anything dramatic. The internet went first. Auto-renewal declined, service suspended, the kind of thing my mother-in-law had never once dealt with personally. Then the alarm company sent a notice, then the gas account, then the streaming subscriptions she watched her shows on, then a polite but firm letter from the snow removal company, and underneath all of it, ticking quietly, the mortgage payment that didn't come out on the first of the month for the first time in 3 years. My husband started calling on day 3, then texting, then both. We need to talk. Mom's freaking out. This is insane, Margot. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say that I hadn't already said in a career folder. On day 5, he showed up at my hotel. Somebody at the front desk called up. I met him in the lobby because I wasn't about to let him into a room. He looked smaller than I remembered, which is strange to say about someone you've slept beside for years. Wrinkled shirt, Dark under the eyes, that frantic edge a person gets when the comfortable floor they stood on turns out to be someone else's. "You're humiliating us," he hissed, low, conscious of the lobby. "Megan's crying. Mom doesn't even understand what's happening with the bills." "I was told to leave," I said. "I left. You're punishing everyone." "No," I said, and I was surprised how steady I was. "I'm just not paying for people who decided I didn't belong." "There's a difference, even if it doesn't feel like one from where you're standing." He reached for my arm, the old reflex, and I stepped back, and the stepping back said more than any sentence could have. That was when I handed him the second envelope. My lawyer's letter, an itemized accounting of my contributions, a statement of my ownership interest, and the formal proposal. Either the family bought out my share at fair market value, or the house would go to sale to satisfy the arrears and divide the proceeds. A clean fork in the road, with no soft option down the middle. His hands shook as he read it. "You planned all this," he whispered, and there was something like awe and something like betrayal mixed together in it. I shook my head. "No, you planned the part where I leave. I just read it all the way to the end before any of you did." I walked back to the elevator and didn't look behind me, and as the doors closed, my phone buzzed. Not him this time, my mother-in-law. Her message had finally dropped the gentle, mercy-dispensing tone she'd used at the kitchen table. "You are tearing this family apart. After everything we did for you." I stood in the elevator and read it twice and felt, instead of guilt, an almost unbearable lightness. "Everything we did for you." I went back through 3 years in my head, the room near the furnace, the smiles I'd refilled coffee through, the Chesterfield she bragged about that I'd paid for, the income I'd shrunk to keep a man comfortable, and I could not find, anywhere in that whole inventory, the everything she meant. By the second week, the math did what math does. My sister-in-law and her husband had been counting on the house being basically free. Her mother's home, no rent, just chip in for a few bills. They had a baby coming, and the kind of jobs that don't stretch to cover a mortgage in arrears, plus utilities, plus property tax, plus my eventual buyout. The plan only ever worked with me underneath it, silently absorbing the difference. Take me out, and there was no plan. There was just a 4-bedroom house and a stack of obligations and a baby due in spring. My husband came one last time, and this time the anger was gone, which was somehow harder to watch. He just looked tired and scared. "Mom says if you come back we can figure something out," he said. "Adjust things. Make it fair this time. Adjust things." I looked at the man I'd married, the one who'd let me be erased for the price of his own comfort, and I waited to feel the pull I would have felt a year earlier. The instinct to soften, to manage, to make it okay for everyone but me. It wasn't there. I'd paid it all out, apparently, along with everything else. "You already had your chance to make it fair," I said. 3 years of chances. You just thought I wasn't keeping track. Behind him, through the lobby's glass doors, I could see the gray afternoon and the snow coming down again, and I thought about how the snow removal wasn't getting paid anymore, and I let him go. The last piece arrived a few weeks later, on a regular Tuesday, the way the biggest things in life so often do. My lawyer called, not with conflict, but with something close to satisfaction in her voice. The title held up exactly as she'd said. My ownership share was real and documented, the contributions were unassailable, and the renovation receipts, the ones in my name from before we'd even moved in, the kitchen and the basement suite my mother-in-law had once bragged were her vision, only deepened my claim. There was no version of this where they kept the house and quietly handed it to my sister-in-law as though I'd never existed. To get me off the title, they had to pay me. To pay me, they had to find money none of them had. And the mortgage, unpaid, was not going to wait for anyone's feelings to resolve. When the formal notice went through, my mother-in-law didn't call. She didn't email. She didn't send one of her, "After everything we did for you" messages. She went silent, completely, and I came to understand that her silence was its own kind of confession. It was the silence of someone who's just realized the power they'd been so sure of had never really been theirs at all. She hadn't pushed out a freeloader. She'd cut out the one beam the whole thing had been resting on, and then stood there surprised when the ceiling came down. My husband sent one final message. I didn't think it would end like this. I looked at it for a long time before I answered. I thought about all the ways I could have softened it, the explanations I could have offered, the door I could have left open a crack. And then I typed the only thing that was true. Neither did I wrote. But you chose not to look. I just stopped paying you to. I didn't take the house in the end. I didn't need to, and I didn't want it. What would I do with a 4-bedroom monument to 3 years of being invisible? They sold it. Quietly, in late spring, the way you sell something to cover debts, no celebration, no announcement, just a sign on the lawn, and then no sign. My share came to me clean, with my contributions paid back on top. My sister-in-law and her husband and the baby ended up in a rented townhouse out past the ring road. My mother-in-law moved into a condo and, from what I heard, stopped hosting the book club she used to lord over from the Chesterfield. And my husband, the divorce went through without much fight, because there wasn't much left to fight over once everyone could finally see who had actually owned what. I signed a lease on a small place in Inglewood, just me, with good light in the mornings and a window in every room, including the one I sleep in. I bought a new sofa, a real one I picked up myself, and the first night I sat on it, I caught myself waiting to feel guilty for the expense and then realized there was no one left to be uncomfortable about my money but me. I pay my own bills now, every one of them, and I watch the payments leave my account with something I never felt in that house. Not resentment, not dread, just the plain, solid satisfaction of a thing being mine. I wasn't thrown out. I see that clearly now, on the other side of it. I was handed the one thing I'd been too loyal and too tired to give myself for 3 long years. The morning I called those movers, I thought I was leaving. I wasn't. I was finally letting go of a door I'd been holding shut against my own life, and when it swung open, everything I'd been guarding was still there, waiting, with my name on it the whole time. For a long time, I thought loyalty meant never letting anyone see the size of what I carried. I paid the mortgage, the gas, the hydro, the snow removal, all of it out of one account nobody bothered to look at, and I told myself that quiet was the same thing as love. It wasn't. Quiet was just a way of making myself easy to ignore. The night my mother-in-law told me there wasn't room for me anymore, the warm air from the furnace I'd replaced was still moving under her feet, and I finally understood that nothing in that house had ever been mine because I gave it freely. It was mine because I paid for it, and I'd let everyone forget that, including me. What happened afterward wasn't luck, and it wasn't revenge. Not really. It was cause meeting consequence the way it always does, just on a delay long enough that people stop expecting it. They treated me like furniture, so they were genuinely shocked when the furniture had a name on the title. Curtis chose not to look at our finances, so he didn't get to act surprised when the numbers turned out to be real. Megan planned a life on top of money she never asked about, so the floor gave way the moment that money stopped flowing. None of them did anything dramatic to me. They simply assumed I would keep absorbing the cost of being unwanted, and I taught them to assume it. If I've learned anything worth passing on, it's that you need 3 things at once, and most of us only manage 2. You need a clear sense of what's right, because I could have emptied that house out of spite, and instead I left with exactly what was mine and not 1 cent more, and that line is the only reason I can sleep. You need the sense to keep records, to read the paper you sign, even when someone calls it just paperwork, to know your own worth in actual numbers instead of vague feelings, because feelings don't hold up and a folder of dated receipts does, and you need the spine to act on both when the moment comes. To call the movers at 9 in the morning while the coffee's still warm instead of waiting for permission that's never coming. I'm in my own place in Inglewood now, with light in every room and a sofa I picked myself. I pay every bill that lands on my doorstep, and watching the money leave doesn't hurt anymore, because there's no one left to shrink myself for. I wasn't thrown out of a home. I was finally let out of the habit of disappearing. And the strange gift in all of it is that I do the quiet years again. Everyone, just to have learned the difference between being needed and being valued before I turned 32.